So just one last point. Yesterday, Mayor had brought up, and I forgot to mention, I had actually wanted to mention it, when we were talking about those cities of refuge, what's remarkable, remember we said that there are, don't try to sit, leave this place empty, yeah, no problem. We had mentioned that there are six main cities of refuge and 42 other cities of refuge. And in the 6 cities of refuge, anybody who gets in there, no matter how they get in there, they are protected. What that means is that the next of kin could chase the guy to kill him, but as soon as he gets into the city of refuge, he's not allowed to kill him anymore. And if he does kill him when he's in the city of refuge, so then he's considered a murderer. So strange, you see how the Torah requires that a person has to control their emotions. That means the person's emotionally distraught because this guy killed his brother, and it was unintentional, but he's upset, and he goes and chases him, and now they're playing a serious game of tag. It's tag, a life or death tag. Somebody just telling me, a guy the other year told me there's actually a movie about tag, something like that, which I just heard about now. But this was serious tag. Now this guy's like, you're in, I'm not in, you're in, you're out. And all you got to do is get under the shade of a tree that's also part of the tree. It's like 1 foot in or 2 foot in professional football. You're out of bounds or in bounds. And over here, you're playing for, all right, it's not as important as playing for a touchdown, but nothing is. But it is life and death. So you're trying to get in, and so he can't kill him once he's in the city of refuge. He's emotionally distraught. That's too bad. You're going to have to control your emotions. And therefore, up until that point, but not, and if you do kill him when he's in the city of refuge, now you, the next of kin, are not considered a murderer. So that's first of all. Second of all, and in general, you see how the Torah expects us to control our emotions. Because you could have a situation where a person, for example, Rahman al-Islam suffers a loss. They mourn for 7 days. Yet on Shabbos, there's no mourning. A person's not even allowed to cry on Shabbos, and a person has to control themselves. On Shabbos, they're not even allowed to think about it. Obviously, within reason, and different people have different degrees of control. But the Torah demands the Torah makes demands on us on even controlling our emotions. So that's first of all. More than that, and what's remarkable here is you have 6 cities of refuge, which are the main ones, then the 42. Now, if you run to one of the 42 cities, then you have to pay rent. And in the 6 cities of refuge, you get to go in there and rent free. That's one difference between them. What's remarkable is that we find a combination of 6 versus 42. Anybody know where, besides mayor, does anybody know where we find a 6-42 combination? And that's not the cadence on a quarterback's and a footer. 642, 642. Other than that, where do you find a 642? Anybody know? So, leave this space open. You can sit over there. Yeah, that's fine. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is 6. And in the paragraph of V'ahavta, Baruch Shem is just added afterwards, the paragraph of V'ahavta is 42 words. So you have a 6 and a 42. What is the significance of what's it got to do with the cities of refuge? The answer is, goes back to what we said yesterday. If a person is focused, Shema Yisrael is obviously the symbol of what a Jew's focus is, a connection to God. That's where we are claiming our allegiance to God every day, where we accept what's called Ol Malchus Shemayim, where we accept the yoke of heaven. And to the degree that a person is connected to God, symbolized by the Shema, is a degree that a person is connected to everything that a person, every attitude a person should have, including concern for other people's lives. And if the person is detached from it, so that's a person who can end up killing people recklessly. And therefore, the cities of refuge, there's no coincidence that the cities of refuge are very the commentaries point out that connection to Kriya Shema. That's the power. I had a guy here once, by the way, a guy from England, from Manchester. So he comes home to his college. He was in college, and he walked into his apartment, and he walked in just on time. There was a holdup in his apartment. A couple of guys with guns, and everybody in the apartment was on the ground, and they told him get on the floor and don't move. So the guy's he's on the floor, and these guys are holding a gun to them, and they're going to now search the apartment. And he said to this guy with the gun, "Is it okay if I could pray? Is it okay if I pray?" He's the guy, "You can do anything you want, mate." Right? So he said Shema because he expected to die. He didn't know if he was going to die or not. So he said Shema, which is what people say when they think they're going to die. So they ended up they robbed them at gunpoint, and then the police caught these guys and had a trial. And in the trial, this guy testified, and he testified that he had said Shema because he was afraid that he was going to die. And based on his testimony, they sent these guys, I think, 20 years or 20. They gave him a longer sentence because based on his testimony that he said Shema, the judge felt that it was a life threat. This guy felt his life was threatened, so it turned out that because they said Shema, they put these guys away for longer. And you're like, yeah, pretty cool. So Shema is. I once said Shema when I first got married. I said Shema. No, not because that didn't come out right. Sorry. I went sorry. Yeah, this is on video, guys. This is on. This is recorded. What I meant, we had been married. We were on a plane coming to Israel. And at the time, my wife and I were both afraid of flying. Right? She wasn't as much as I was. We get on the plane and start saying Tehillim. I just pictured the pilots in the cockpit sweating. Just like like that. It was just a terrible experience. So we're on the plane, and here we are anyway. As it is, we're nervous flyers, and we were at the time anyway. And so all of a sudden, in the middle, we're sitting there like this. And all of a sudden, we look at each other, the plane goes into a dive. Now, not like this, but we just felt that it's all of a sudden going, like this. And we just looked at each other, and we actually said Shema on the plane. And it lasted 10 seconds. And after 10 seconds, the plane straightens out. And then we're just sitting there like this, and she's crying, and I'm trying not to cry because I'm brave, and also after about 15 minutes later, the pilot comes out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising at about 31,000 feet. If you look down, that pilot voice, he goes, "Sorry about that little inconvenience a few minutes ago. That was just the automatic pilot malfunction, and we just took over manually. Everything's okay. Enjoy your flight." Then we're sitting there tittering. Then they come around. Would you like your kosher meals, sir? There was no appetite there. There was just not. We're not eating no kosher meals. That's the way. So when a Jew is in a life-threatening situation, a Jew says Shema. That's the potency of Shema. Okay, now we go to the book of Devarim. In the book of Devarim, page 938. First of all, I've told you Devarim in English. The name of the book of anybody know what Devarim is called in English? Deuteronomy. Good. You're on a roll, Eli. What does Deuteronomy mean?
It's Latin for words.
Latin for what?
Words.
Well, you could get away with that because nobody knows. So you can say, yeah, it's Latin for words. You just say Latin, and everybody is, oh, there's the Latin guy over there. So actually, Deuteronomy actually comes, which I never knew what it meant. It actually comes from the word deuce. A deuce is a repetition. A deuce is twice. Right? There's a tray. If you hit a 3, it's a tray. A deuce is a 2. And the reason it's called Deuteronomy, because in the Medrash, the Halacha Medrash is called Mishneh Torah. Mishneh Torah means the repetition of the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu repeats many of the various halachas, generally the ones that apply on a communal level. Many of those laws are repeated in the book of Devarim, which is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to the Jewish people. So the book of Devarim is a repetition. It's called Mishneh Torah, and it starts the following: Eile hadvarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael. Moshe spoke to the entire Jewish people. Be'ever hayarden, on the other side of the Yarden, ba'midbar ba'arova bolsuf bein parno vein tofo v'loven v'chatzeros v'dizahav. And Moshe Rabbeinu alludes to various places without referring to them. To incidents that took place at various places without referring them to specifically what the incidents were. So Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about in a remez. A remez is what we call a hint. He hints at various things that the Jewish people did. Now, one of the ideas here is, first of all, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to now speak until the day he dies. And what day did Moshe? This is on the first day of Adar. The first day, Shvat. This is the first day of Shvat that Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking. And Moshe Rabbeinu then speaks for 36 days because Moshe Rabbeinu dies on Zayin Adar. So it's going to be a 36-day speech. Now, if you take a look at the very first word of the Parsha, Eila, Aleph, Lamed, Hey is what? Aleph is 1. How much is it? 36. Eila Hadvarim, these are the words that Moshe Rabbeinu speaks, and it's going to be for 36 days. Now, Rashi points out, take a look at the very first Rashi. There's a life lesson here. Eila Hadvarim. Says Rashi, Lefi shehein divrei tochachos, because these are words of rebuke. Umana kan kol ha-mekomos sheyichisu liftei ha-makom. It mentions over here the various places in the desert where the Jewish people antagonized God. So, therefore, liftei ha-makom, lefichach sosam es hadvarim. Therefore, he was ambiguous about it. He's kiran beremez. He only mentioned it as an allusion. He hinted at it, mipnei kvodan shel Yisrael, because of the honor of the Jewish people, number one. And then skip to the next page where it says lifnei moso, before his death. It's on where does the words that lifnei moso appear? Eila Dvarim. 1 second. Rashi says, just 1 second. It's on Pasuk Gimel. On Pasuk Gimel. Let's read the next Pasuk. 11 days from Chorev till Kadesh Barnea. By the way, Parshas Devarim always comes around right around Tisha B'Av. And 11 is the 11 days of the year that we actually are in mourning. There are 11 days that we mourn for the Beis HaMikdash. There's the 9 days, which is starting tonight. The 9 days, which includes Tisha B'Av. And there's also the 17th of Tammuz. And there's also the 10th of Teves. It's 11 days of the year that are specifically mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. So that's a Chadasar Yom. We have other fast days, but those are the ones mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. Just 1 second. And then, and look at the next pasuk, Pasuk Gimel. Vayhi be'arboim shana be'ashtei yosar chodesh ve'echad lachodesh. In the 40th year, on the 11th month, which is Shvat, on the first day of the month, Diber Moshe el b'nei Yisrael b'kachol asher tzivah Hashem Moshe aleim, is all that Hashem commanded. Now take a look at Rashi. We're going to put this all together. I just want you to see this Rashi first. It's on the left column, back on 938. Left column, 8 lines from the bottom. Vayhi be'arboim shana, if you find it, please show the person next to you. Vayhi be'arboim shana be'ashtei yosar chodesh ve'echad lachodesh. Milamed, this teaches, shelo hochichan el asamuch lamisa. Moshe Rabbeinu only rebuked the Jewish people right before he died. Mimi lamad, who did he learn from? Mi Yaakov Avinu. Shelo hochiach es banav el asamuch lamisa. Yaakov also rebuked his sons only close to death. And then the Torah goes through the rebuke. Why is that? Now skip down a line. 4 lines from the bottom. There are 4 reasons why, if you're going to rebuke, you only rebuke close to death. Number 1, so you don't repeat it. You're going to rebuke somebody, don't keep saying it over and over and over and over. You say it once and finished. And people, when they rebuke, tend to go over, I told you, but they go on, they're on a roll. Once they're bawling you out, they really let fly, right? They got, okay, number 1, and which is very annoying. I heard you the first time. And another reason is that his fellow shouldn't see him and then be embarrassed. Every time you see me, you're going to remember, I told you about, I gave you the rebuke, right? So there are reasons why you rebuke before you die. Now, there's a technical problem here that most people, and we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and he learned it from Yaakov Avinu. Well, the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yaakov Avinu is they knew when they were going to die. For most people, they don't know when they're going to die. So this doesn't apply in our day and age. If a person has to rebuke his child or his disciple, so if you see somebody doing something wrong, you got to tell them, you're really not supposed to be doing that. How you rebuke is something else. That's the essential part here. Number 1, don't keep repeating it. Don't repeat it, number 1. And number 2, you notice that it's all alluded to. Moshe Rabbeinu says it he hints at it. Why do you hint at it? So first of all, to go and say to somebody, you're a slob. right? You know, it's lack of tact, and you just make a person feel bad. But to say to a person, you know, you could actually be doing a little bit better on your eating habits at the table. Maybe use silverware, right? When you have mashed potatoes, try to use a fork. Okay, don't just use your hands, right? As opposed to saying, you know what, you belong in a barn, buddy. You just make a person feel bad, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu alludes to it. Number one. Number two, there's also the idea of, will a person be receptive? This is always difficult. Will you be receptive to the rebuke? I need to point out a flaw in somebody. Now, you know, if most people get very defensive, that's a rule in life. We all like to think that we're successful, wonderful people. Nobody likes to be called out on anything. And therefore, if you start telling somebody, let's say I want to talk to you about your eating habits, because you tend to eat mashed potatoes with your hands. Right, and I feel, you know, mashed potato salad, you should really be using a fork at this stage of life. So, you know, my grandchildren don't use forks, but he's 2. You know, at a certain point, the person should graduate to silverware, right, to tableware. So, you know, if I say to you, you know, Blake, I just, you know, it's an interesting thing about food. And in the minute I say that, he looks at me and goes, like that, like, here we go again. You know, don't even bring it up. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. He's not going to listen. He's not going to be receptive. So you can allude to it, start talking about it, and this is very important in life. You have to know the timing. Timing is everything. And you have to know the person if you're in a good mood or a bad mood. Are you in the mood to be corrected? That's one of the reasons. By the way, somebody once pointed, I think, in How to Win Friends and How to Win Friends and Manipulate People. So what do you call it? In the book, it's an excellent book, by the way. I recommend it for everybody. We keep it in our bathroom. It's a regular, you know, that's one of the things we keep in the bathroom, along with the statistics, all-time baseball statistics. But what do you call it? I recommend it because there's nothing non-Toradic about it. It's very, very, very good advice. And there are big Talmidei Chachamim who read this book, and it's very good advice of social interaction. The only problem with the book that I found is that it's even on the cover of the book. The cover of the book is advertised on the cover. What's it called? The draw. What's it called? The thing that draws you into the book.
Portrait?
No. When they write on the book, the blurb on the cover is, now you too can succeed. Now you too can get ahead. Now you too can make money. Now you too. How? By being nice and influential. You know, not because you should be nice. Even though in the book he writes that you should be nice just for the sake of being nice. But the blurb on the outside is what's in it for me by being nice to you, which is not a Torah attitude. The Torah attitude is you should be nice to people because you should be nice to people. Forget about yourself. Take yourself out of the picture. So in the book he writes that when you're criticizing somebody, parents call you, you're not doing well in school. Yeah, we've all, I don't know about you guys, you know, you gotta, yeah, listen, you're not, you know, you got an 80 on that test, but that is just not good enough. If you switch the word but to and, it changes everything, the entire tone. Listen, you got an 80 on the test, and if you study some more, you'll even get a higher grade. And it switched from but to and it changes the entire tone. That's what he recommends. If you're going to rebuke somebody, and then you rebuke them, and you come off harsh, it generally won't be listened to. That's one of the most difficult. That's why the Gemara says, no, the Gemara says this. They were talking about right from the time of the Talmud. No one in our generation knows how to give rebuke, and no one knows how to receive rebuke. And if you say to somebody, you ought to get that splinter out from between your teeth, he's going to say to you, well, you ought to get that crossbeam out from between your eyes. That means whenever people rebuke, we tend to say, well, you're not so great yourself. You also have flaws. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu has to be very careful when he does this for the Jewish people, and he wants to do it in a way. And by the way, when you do rebuke somebody, you're not allowed to embarrass him. It says, Hocheach tochiach es amisecha, you have to rebuke your fellow man, velo sisa olav chet, but make sure you don't get an avera while you're doing it. And generally, the line is, if he starts turning red because he's embarrassed by the rebuke, he's actually embarrassed, at that point you've crossed the line. Because there are ways to correct people without hurting their feelings. And certainly not in public, certainly not in front of other people, unless you're somebody who has to correct somebody and other people. Otherwise, you don't do it in front of other people. So that's how the Torah begins over here. Now, The word hadvarim, ele hadvarim, is also related. It's if you switch around the vowelization, it can be read as devorim. What are devorim? What's a devora?
Words of.
That's a davar.
Yeah.
What's a devar? Oh, say somebody said it. A devora is a bee. In Hebrew, a devora is a bee. And so ele hadvarim, the Medrash says it can be read as ele hadvarim. These are the bees. Oh, why is the rebuke compared to a bee? And then dies. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Moshe Rabbeinu, this is before he dies, right? The bee stings and then the bee dies. So that's why Rosh Rabbeinu says that Eila Advarim, be like a bee. That means that that goes exactly with what Rashi was saying. That if you're going to rebuke, you can give the rebuke, but make sure the rebuke is towards the end of a person's life, so that just like a bee, number one. Number two, the Jewish people themselves are compared to bees. Right? Why are the Jewish people compared to bees? They're workers. By the way, there are bees that some of the bees work very hard. Some bees they're hard-working bees. Number one, the average bee's lifespan I think is 45 days. Some of them live 60 days, and I think the queen bee lives 3 years. And the bees are completely and fully devoted to the queen bee. The remarkable thing about bees, they're completely and fully devoted, which is exactly what the Jewish people are supposed to be. We're supposed to be completely and fully devoted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? Now, I'm going to take this out of context for a second. Okay? So, Rashi says, if you take a look at Pasuk, take a look at Pasuk Daled. Take a look at Pasuk Daled. Moshe Rabbeinu starts rebuking the Jewish people, and then Rashi says at top of page 940, Acharei hakoso esichon melech ha'omori asher yoshev b'cheshbon, v'es og melech ha'boshan asher yoshev be'ashtoros be'edrei. This follows after he kills Sichon and he kills Og. By the way, there's a medrash that says this Sichon was actually a son of Noach. I didn't know this. There's a medrash that says Sichon, Noach, his first wife died. Then Noach married a second wife, and Sichon was born, and he was born in the Teva. She got into the Teva pregnant. Yeah. So this Sichon, apparently, in the ark. He was born in the ark. And but there's no cohabitation in the ark, but she was pregnant before she got into the ark. There is a medrash like that he was a son of Noach. That's what the medrash says. Whatever it was, he was a very fierce king and a fierce warrior, and he and Og, Moshe Rabbeinu, has killed them. He's led that battle, and then that's the last thing he does before he goes and starts rebuking the Jewish people. So this is also a lesson in rebuke. The best thing to do for rebuke, you have your son, and you want to tell your son that you'd like him to improve his study habits, first give him $10. Give your son $10. Say, by the way, you've been helping her out around the house a lot. By the way, here's $10. And maybe you could, maybe spend a little more time with the books at night. Maybe you did something for me, so I know that you're concerned about me. See, if you start rebuking somebody and say, listen, you're a good guy, but. So then I know that the last thing you're interested in telling me is that I'm a good guy. That has nothing to do with it. It's good to start with a compliment. It's good to start with a compliment, but if you use the word but, people, that gets washed out. You should always end with the compliment. Listen, you're having trouble in school, and I expect you to do a little more studying. But I really do appreciate the fact that you mow the lawn every day. So you end up building him up, number one. Number two, one of the best ways to rebuke people, especially in religious areas, is, and this is what we used to say to our kids, my kids were less than perfect. By the way, I know you expect that they only spoke Aramaic, and studied Mishnayos. It wasn't quite like that. And what I said to my kids, I would say something, a boy like you doesn't do that. A girl like you doesn't wear something like that. Because then you delivered a double message. A girl like you doesn't wear something like that. I built you up. I expect, you're on a higher level than that. And a boy like you doesn't talk like that. A boy like you doesn't. By the way, one of the mistakes parents make is they overreact to certain things, especially when a kid says a bad word. Little boy says a bad word. Mothers go berserk. Mothers go nuts with that. Kid comes in and goes, Mommy, you're a poopy. Don't you say that word. The tickle starts spinning around on her head, and she's just got, and then, that's a mistake. All you've done is reinforced it. All you've done is you reinforced it. All you've done is you reinforced it. What you say to a kid is, listen, man, first of all, he doesn't even know what he's saying. He heard some big kid in school say, he's only 9. He heard some 11-year-old say a word, which he probably doesn't know what it means. And so he said the word because it sounds good. And his mother goes nuts. All you've done is you've reinforced it. And then the next time the father's out of the house and the mother's trying to get the kids to sleep alone, and she said, okay, yeah, Yankee, brush your teeth. Chaim, I want you to finish your homework. Miri, I want you to get clean. And all of a sudden, Yankee just says, Mommy, you're a poopy. You're a woo, and it's all pandemonium breaks loose, right? Because he knows how to press her buttons. And the biggest, it's a very big mistake. Sometimes they wash the kid. Did you guys ever have your mouths washed out with soap?
Oh, yeah.
You had it done?
Mm-hmm.
They actually did it to you?
Rabbi, do we get a DCFS?
You really, what, Moshe, 1 second. You really, somebody actually washed your mouth?
Soap in my mouth.
Are you serious?
Liquid.
Yeah.
Liquid soap? You actually, they did that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I contend, and what did you learn?
That it tastes terrible.
Yeah. Oh, all you really learn is don't say bad words around adults with soap. That's all you learn, because when you're outside the house, there you go. So if adults are around with soap, I always tell mothers. When I give classes to mothers, I tell mothers, you want it, you know the best. First of all, if you got that trigger finger for soap, I must soap this kid, right? I must soap it. So you know what? I would use it on Lashon Hara. I use it on Lashon Hara. Because when a kid is 22 years old and he's on a shidduch and he's sitting across the table for meeting a young lady that he might marry, the likelihood at that point of him saying, you know what, you're a poopy, that's very unlikely. But that the two of them are going to sit and talk Lashon Hara, that's much more likely. That's much more likely. I would use, if you're already going to go to the soap, so use how, you know what the problem is? Because if you go to the soap, then you got to use it on yourself, if you're going to use it on Lashon Hara. And that would be the best thing that a mother could do for her kids. The best thing she could possibly do is the mother says a bad word, or unlikely, if from woman's not going to say a bad word. Once in a while, maybe something will slip out, like if that last kugel burns on Erev Shabbos. Right? It's Erev Shabbos, you ever see the frum woman running around the house doing 12 different things, and all of a sudden, oh no, and she comes up running to the oven, and that last chicken, batch of chicken or a kugel, something, it burnt. I like to see her right at that moment. Then she gives that woman stomp. You ever see them? They go like, ow, that stomp, right? And then she says something, right? Now, it's not terrible, not horrific, but less discreet than she would normally. You know what she should do at that point? Call all the kids into the kitchen. Guys, I said a bad word, watch this. And she should put some soap in her own mouth. That'll teach the kids a lesson. They'll never do it. No one's ever going to commit soap suicide. That's never going to happen, right? But if they really want to teach a lesson, that'll do it. Because the kids are going to talk about that for months. Mommy ate soap. Mommy, why does it have soap? Soap. Right? Then what's likely to happen is the next day an anonymous box of toothpaste will end up on their doorpost with a note. We didn't know things were so tough. Kids in school said that you guys don't have toothpaste, you use soap. Hashem should help you. That sort of thing. So that works much better. That works much better, because at that point the kids see mommy's playing seriously. To go and torture a kid, that's always fun. Easy, sorry, not fun, easy. That's easy, right? But so the kid learns, don't say bad words around adults with soap. And I never understood that. Oh, that, yeah. And what about it? And so if the kid steals, if the kid shoplifts, you guys never took something from the farm? You never took a chocolate bar in your life without paying for it? So what should you have? The parents will catch you. What should they do? Take a cigarette and burn his hand? Where does this end? Where does the torture end over here, right? So if you're already going to make an issue out of Lashon Hara, that's something that's much more likely to continue in life than saying bad words. But the way to handle it is say to the kid, listen, in our house we don't talk like that. A mensch doesn't say that. I appreciate if you don't say it. Right? But the last thing I'm going to do is get upset about it. There are a lot of other things in life to get upset about with kids than that. Blake, what were you going to ask?
So do the levels of giving rebuke change if the person you're trying to give rebuke to is of a much greater stature than you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good question. You see, we ourselves understand that. There are certain things I expect from certain people. And other people, I just don't expect it. We ourselves are held to that standard. When the not yet religious look at us and say, oh, look, a religious man embezzled, right? I understand. And if you're not religious, it's okay to embezzle? No, but we don't expect any better. See, we are making, as much as we aren't doing it, we are making a public statement. By putting on a yarmulke, and behaving in a religious manner in other areas, we're making a statement that because we're religious, so we hold ourselves to a higher standard of rule, and therefore other people think also that we should be held ourselves to a higher standard. And as soon as they see a flaw, they're ready to jump in. They're ready to jump in and point out our flaws. And yes, absolutely. If you see a guy in Ohr Somayach, and he studies, if I tell you there's a guy in Ohr Somayach, a guy who was secular, and he's become religious, and he's been religious for 3 months, and he studies Torah 2 hours a day, what would you say? I'm pretty impressed. I think that's pretty good. I think that's very good. If I tell you there's a boy learning in Punovich who studies Torah 2 hours a day, what would your reaction be? 2 hours a day. I mean, this guy's supposed to be studying 12 hours a day minimum. So it's relative to who the person is. I want to tell you something else about you guys. And I was thinking about this, but in general, I think you guys are a little too harsh on yourselves. Could you imagine a guy in the Olympics who wins a gold medal, and not only he wins a gold medal, he sets a world record. And he walks away thinking, boy, I wish I would have set the world record by even more. He can't even enjoy the victory because all he's thinking about is, well, I set the world record by 3 seconds. I should have set it by 5 seconds. Well, you can't enjoy it. You just won a race. You got a medal. You set a record. What do you want from yourself? And often I find that you guys are, look where you've won a race. You set a record. You deserve a gold medal. And then you're harsh. You say, I couldn't. I was in davening the other day and I couldn't keep up with the rest of the shul. You really think you're going to go to Gehenna for that? Yeah. There he is. Burn him. He didn't say Baruch Shamar on time. Honestly, what are you expecting? So if it's a guy who should be getting to shul, has been going to shul, and it should be. Everybody's got a different standard, but you got to be realistic about where you came from. We're not 7th generation B'nai Brak. I mean, you're not 7th generation, you're Yerushalmi. These kids are born with a golden Torah spoon in their mouth, right? We weren't born with that. What do you want from us? Okay, so each person at his level, and the level increases. And at a certain point, I expect more from you if you've been in Ohr Somayach or you've been studying Torah for a year. I do expect more from you than if you've been studying for 2 weeks. And that's the rebuke is always relative to the person's level. Now, why does Moshe Rabbeinu, at this point, the Torah mention this? Because the Jewish people, to accept Moshe Rabbeinu, this is remarkable, to accept Moshe Rabbeinu's rebuke, he's going to come and rebuke, they're going to look at Moshe Rabbeinu, well, what have you done for us? Can you imagine saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, what have you done for us? Well, I got you out of Egypt, for one thing, and I gave you a Torah, and I fed you for 40 years, like by mun, and what do you, I protected you. No, that was yesterday. That was yesterday, right? What have you done for me today? The last thing he's done is he's defeated Sichon and Og. That's how fickle people are. That's how fickle people are. Yeah. What have you done for me? What have I done for you? Yeah. What have you done for me right now? Oh, yeah, you beat Sichon. No, that's all Moshe Rabbeinu's done. Moshe Rabbeinu's been helping them for the last 40 years. He got them out of Egypt. But that's not how people see it. That's not how people react. What have you done for me right now? And everybody's guilty of that when they have it with a little tiff with their parents. Right? I don't mean a religious tiff. I mean, where the parents are upset. You wanted your parents to give you something, buy you something, do you something, and now you're upset with your parents. Oh, you're upset with your parents? What about all the other things your parents have done for you? Yeah, but this you didn't give me, therefore you're upset with your parents because of one thing? What about the other things that your parents have done for you? Right? So we are all very fickle. Okay. Take a look at Pasuk Hey. So this is a little what do you call it? Hard to believe. Be'ever Ayardain, it's hard to believe. It's not hard to believe. The Torah says it, but it's a remarkable concept. Be'ever Ayardain be'eretz Moav hoil Moshe be'er es haTorah azos lebar. Moshe Rabbeinu started clarifying this Torah. Take a look at Rashi. Right column of Rashi, 7 lines from the bottom. Be'er es haTorah. What does it mean Moshe Rabbeinu clarified the Torah? Says Rashi, B'shivim lashon Parsha lahem. He explained the Torah to them in 70 languages. That's what the words of Rashi say. He taught them the Torah in 70 languages. He clarified the Torah in 70 languages. I mean, 70 languages. How many languages? If you know somebody, he knows 6 languages. Wow, we're impressed. If somebody knows 6 languages, we're really impressed. How many languages do you really know? Yeah, I know Hebrew and I know English. Some people know Yiddish, right? Some people know Yiddish. And if you have Spanish in there, so wow, you're a legend, right? 70 languages? You know, what does that mean, 70 languages? A. B, why would he clarify to them? Why is that necessary to teach them the Torah in 70 languages? So one of the approaches here is that if it literally means 70 languages, it's a reminder to us. And it's a reminder that wherever we are, under any circumstances, Torah applies. So if you end up somewhere where the language is different, like England, right? You have to realize that the Torah applies in England too, right? You know, they speak a different language there. So the Torah applies in England also. I told you, Americans and English, they say we're two nations divided by one language. So if you go to England, the Torah applies there too. But in places where there's seriously different language, if you go to Hungary, I once did a Shabbaton in Hungary. I heard them speaking Hungarian. And it was a Shabbaton. They speak English, but they also it was like interpreted in Hungarian. I want to tell you something. Hungarian sounded to me like people were literally mumbling. And then afterwards, somebody told me it's ranked as the second most difficult language in the world. Hungarian is difficult. Number one apparently is Japanese. It's the most difficult language in the world. I don't know where Chinese. I mean, Chinese is no party either. But what do you call it? It's a Hungarian is very. But if you're in Hungary, you're going to have to learn Torah in Hungarian if that's what the language is. So 70 represents the 70 nations. That even when we go to exile, the Torah still applies. Number one. Number two, other commentaries say 70 Lishonos does not mean languages. Did you ever hear the expression Shivim Panim La Torah? The Torah has 70 different interpretations. That means you can learn something at the literal level, at the symbolic level, at an illusionary level, at a Kabbalistic level, and so on and so forth. Shivim Panim La Torah. There are many different interpretations of the Torah. They have to be accurate interpretations, but there are 70 possible different interpretations. And therefore the commentaries say that Shivim, the 70 languages over here, refers to Moshe Rabbeinu teaching them different layers of Torah. There are different levels and layers of Torah that Moshe teaches the Jewish people. I'm sorry, you wanted to ask something earlier.
No, I forgot.
Forgot, okay. Yeah, Meir, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if the 70 we said before something with Yosef, is there like something?
Yes, Yosef in Egypt, in order to approach Paro, so what happens is, Paro was sitting on a throne. The Medrash says he was sitting on a throne that was 70 steps up in the air. He knew 70 languages. Again, I'm not convinced that 70 languages literally means language as much as 70 cultures. I don't know exactly what Lashonos means. Whatever it was, the Medrash says that Paro was sitting on the 70th step. Yosef was in prison, and the next day he was going to get out. And the angel Gabriel came to him in prison and taught him 70 languages, because when you approached Paro, you had to, each language that you knew, you went up one more step. So as he would test you, and you would move up a step, you'd move up a step, you'd move up a step. So then Yosef comes to Paro, and so Paro first starts testing him. But apparently it was a sign of wisdom and sophistication. So he speaks to him one language, he says, parlez-vous français, and Yosef answers, and it moves up. That's something in Spanish, goes all the way up. And Yosef is at a certain point face to face with Paro, because he knows all 70 languages. Then Yosef says to Paro, Shalom Aleichem. And Paro didn't answer. Paro didn't know. He didn't know Lashon HaKodesh. So Paro told Yosef, I want you to swear that you're never going to tell anybody that I don't know. Otherwise, they're going to put you ahead of me and make you the king. So Yosef swore to Paro. Now that paid off for Yosef later, because when Yosef said to Paro, I want to bury my father in Eretz Yisrael, Paro wasn't so excited about his finance minister who's been prosperous for the country. He wasn't so excited about his finance minister leaving. So Paro said, no, you don't have permission to bury your father in Eretz Yisrael. Yosef said, yeah, but I swore. I swore to my father I would bury him in Eretz Yisrael. So Paro says, well, you're going to have to annul your oath. So Yosef said, well, if I annul that oath, then I'm going to annul the oath that I said that I won't tell anybody that you know how to speak. So Paro said, I think it's a great day for a funeral in Eretz Yisrael. Please, like I was saying, please go on up here, some wagons go, that sort of thing. So the oath that he made earlier ends up, becoming his bullet for later on. But the Medrash says apparently the languages that, again, that's the Sanhedrin. A Sanhedrin, the members of Sanhedrin had to have at least 2 members of the Sanhedrin that knew 70 languages. According to some, there were 3. and a fourth one who understood 70 languages. So exactly whether language means how to speak it or the culture, that I don't know. I'm not sure about. But that's apparently, as I saw, Moshe Rabbeinu clarifying it in 70 languages means two things. Either that it's an idea of all languages so that wherever we go, we'll still be able to learn Torah, or it means the various layers. And there, by the way, 70, when it says there are 70 different interpretations of Torah, it doesn't mean 70. It means it's just a number. It means they're infinite. There's actually a story about the Vilna Gaon that, and one of the psukim says, I think the pasuk Alu Ze Banegev, where Moshe Rabbeinu tells the spies where to go. The Vilna Gaon dreamt that night. He dreamt. I think the number is brought down 2,260 different interpretations of that pasuk. So it's infinite. It's God's word. So God's infinite. His word is infinite. So it's infinite interpretations. Well, it's called 70 interpretations. Call it 70. So call it 70 languages.